Good afternoon. I think we're still moving a few, but this is Lonnie Daphne, and you are in the employment work group indoor report. So for those that were already in, we're going to have the same conversation. So if you'd like to join another, you certainly are welcome to, or again, you're free to stay here as well. But we're going to get going here in a sec. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Well, welcome. You are joining the employment work group. And for this segment, what I will share with you is the work that the employment work group took a look at from the data from the One Economy report, and then what our indicators and or our action items we are planning to take to change the trajectory for employment for Black Polk County. And so the first comment there, the most direct way to impact the financial security of the Black community in Polk County is through a focus on employment opportunities and again, and barriers, and determining again what those barriers might be and how do we remove them. So to start with, there were the four that are listed here are indicators. So the labor force participation rate for Black people in Polk County, what we saw in the data as it relates to labor force, and just looking at it in Des Moines, African Americans are 70.9% of the labor force or in the labor force, readily and available to be employed. The impact, or what we were seeing from the report, is that 62.5% are actually employed. So they're 70.9% ready, but only 62.5 employed, means again that we have a gap that we need to try and close as it relates to, again, the readiness and or the labor force. So we took a look at that. We also took a look at the unemployment rate for Black people in, again, Polk County. And so looking at the unemployment rate for the Black African American population in Iowa, it is 10.3%, and in Polk County, it's 10.5. Comparatively, and this is prior COVID-19, statewide, the unemployment rate was 2.8%, and then countywide, it was 2.7. So to have an unemployment rate of 2.7, yet we have 10.5% of Black and African Americans unemployed in Polk County. So that unemployment rate for us was staggering. It's also one of those things that is something that we need to take a look at. The number 3 item that we wanted to take a look at was the participation rate in education opportunities for in-demand occupations. So how do we focus in on those education opportunities that are readily available and getting our Black and African American labor force in them, especially for the in-demand occupations? So how do we use take the opportunity to skill build and talent build to build that pipeline, and again, for those in-demand occupations? And then the 4th one was the number of Black people that participate in financial literacy coaching. And why that was important for us, again, is as we think about someone's employment, and when you're thinking about what historically has happened in the Black and African American community, is that as we see the unemployment rate is high, and those that are taking positions and or taking the jobs, they're typically lower wage positions. So obviously with lower wages, you're having that lower income. And we talked about earlier that $30,000 gap specifically in Polk County for our Black and African American population. So when you have lower income, then you have all the factors that you're trying to navigate and negotiate. So that is your housing, that's your health, that could be daycare, that can be, just living day to day. So if there's already a $30,000 shortfall, and again, I have lower wages, lower income, that means I have less savings to fall back on. And so when I don't have that savings or that cushion, as we saw right now, crisis happens. I lost my job. I'm certainly trying to apply for unemployment, but one factor could send a family in crisis. And so with crisis then comes higher poverty rates. And so this is a cycle or a cyclical nature that when we think about the number of Black people that participate in financial literacy coaching, having someone coach you, meeting you where you're at to build that literacy around your finances, but also as we think about when we skill build and get them into the higher paying positions, are they prepared for what happens with the increase of income and how to navigate that space? So it really is kind of that A to Z, taking a look at where people are and how do we coach them to get them to where they're at. So those are the 4 indicators that we took a look at as a work group based on the data from the One Economy report. And then for us, we put actions behind what we would like to see happen as action items. So for the labor force participation rates for Black people in Polk County, measurable outcomes that we established or want to work towards and see is that there's a 5% increase in the Black labor force in Polk County by 2023. So we know, again, it was at 70.9% in the labor force, increasing that by 5%. Decreasing the actual unemployment rate in Polk County by 3% in 2023. So prior COVID, it was 10.5, so we're looking to have that reduced by 3%. 100 Black job applicants entered into the new minority talent database by 2023. And that, again, is in partnership with the Evelyn K. Davis Center, but learned in the last session that the state of Iowa has a talent database that they're trying to deploy. We know Workforce Iowa's also trying to, so there are lots of people digging in this space, but what we want to see is that there are at least 100 people entered into that new minority talent database by 2023 and ready to be employed. And then lastly, 1,200 Black youth placed in internships or work-based learning programs by 2023. And that demographic we're looking at is ages, obviously ready and able to work, 14 to 16 in that space, all the way to the age bracket of 21 to 23, depending upon if someone is graduated from college or trade school or whatever that might be. So having them placed into internships or work-based learning programs. So that then means that there is definitely needing some partnerships with organizations and companies that currently have internships, and how do we get the Black youth in those internships, which then is the gateway to employment with those organizations, and or 2, if there's work-based learning that needs to happen, if there are organizations to partner with to get, again, those Black youth placed. So these are the measurable outcomes that we want to put action around that will impact the labor force participation rate for Black people in Polk County. So I'll stop there and see if there are any questions on that first one.
This is Matt Nelson. I have a question.
Uh-huh.
What involvement are you getting from local small businesses? And have you talked with local chambers of commerce about partnering with them to help you reach these goals?
So that is one good question. Reason why we're here today is so people can hear what the actions would be, and then those that are willing, ready, and able to help with the lifting of the work join in. And so for those that are hearing today and they're interested in being involved in the employment work group, that they would join in so that we can make those connections and those partnerships.
Does anybody, do you know about Project Iowa, that is a workforce development program that wraps people to jobs that are there at the end of their education, like welders and healthcare It's been going for 5 years, and it seems to be working really well. It does wraparound services with childcare and transportation if necessary. So
Mm-hmm.
I
am not personally familiar with it, but does not mean that we couldn't become familiar with it. So certainly is one of those things that we're looking for. What connections can we make? Again, as well as what, we're not trying to recreate the wheel, but where do we connect, as well as where do we specifically land Black and African Americans from Polk County?
Right.
So thank you. Yep, if you're interested in sharing that info, glad to take it. There is a question in there. Are there particular employment segments to make progress on the first measurable outcome for indicator 1? What we found, good question. So in Iowa, when we looked at what the unemployment segments were, it had construction and manufacturing as the number 1 space and place where the highest unemployment claims were, but also just those numbers there. And so not that we're tackling those 2 specifically, but very closely to what Sheena had shared, if we need to skill build. So if those are the highest places of unemployment, some of that is seasonal, but also, is there a particular trade, or are there things that we need to get people skilled in so that if readily available and that job is high in demand, we have a talent pool ready for that. But knowing also Des Moines is in the financial services industry, are there places and spaces and other things that we need to be innovative at, because everyone, banking and insurance may not be it. Are there other segments that we need to be tapping into that Black and African Americans aren't necessarily there? So great question. Let's see here. Thanks for the article, Claudia. And then the next one, some of the specific goals for Black Polk County may have leveraged through some of the key elements of strategy of Central Iowa Works, United Way of Central Iowa as an example. Project Iowa funded by the state. Angie, is that a question or just statement?
No, I was just in listening to what you were reflecting on, was just thinking it might be nice to see alignment and perhaps reference specifically to those goals within some of the work Central Iowa Works is convening, and then certainly with some of United Way's income goals too. It might be nice to see the reflection in both places to lift it up even deeper. Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. All right, so we'll go to the next one. Number 2, the unemployment rate. And again, this falls very closely to how we ended the last conversation. 300 more Black people enrolled in educational opportunities such as PACE, GAP, Last Dollar scholarships, Future Ready Iowa grants, Youth Build by 2023. And really for here, with that 300, it's making sure that, again, when we look at our labor force and look at the unemployment rate, it is that there is a gap of folks obviously missing between that 70.9% and the 62.5% that are actually employed. But are we doing the skill building to make sure we're saying at least 300 more people enrolled in educational opportunities so that the unemployment rate starts to decline, because we have talent ready to step into those positions that are available. Questions on this one? Okay, number 3. We are taking a look at those education opportunities, and one of them in particular is the participation in opportunities for those in demand occupations. What we want is for people to also understand that, again, financial literacy is really, really important. And so 1,000 Black people meet with financial coaches in Polk County by 2023. Again, we take the time to skill build and move folks out of those lower waged paying positions. How is it that we make sure that they're financially set up? And that could be everything from being underbanked all the way to how do I, create budgets? How do I save for retirement? If I'm looking to go from renting to, again, home ownership, what might that look like? So financial coaching can be the A to Z, meeting people where they're at. But we're hoping to have at least 1,000 Black people meet with financial coaches in Polk County by 2023. So one of the actionable items here was to find out who's offering financial coaching. So we do know the Financial Empowerment Network is offering some of that. But are there other organizations? Are there other resources that we need to tap into, in addition to potentially finding coaches that would be willing to volunteer to be those coaches to help us out, again, to help meet this measurable goal? And so that might be outside of the walls, but what we're also looking for is to recruit and or find 30 businesses that are willing to provide financial coaching services to their employees by 2023. Lots of organizations are already doing that. What we want to know is, from what's already available, are people actually taking advantage of it? And how do we beef up those resources that are already currently available? But are there businesses that don't have financial coaching services available to their employees? And how do we get that in-house for those folks? And, the prior work group, prior session, we talked about, for example, Wells Fargo was one. Outside of the walls, they take hands-on banking out to the community and to the schools and those type of things. But inside of the walls, they offer a financial literacy coaching and program to customers and employees only. Not looking to do anything, that is proprietary in nature, but if an organization already provides services, how are we making sure that especially Black and African American employees are taking advantage of it? But again, how do we make sure that we at least find 30 businesses to provide and make sure that that's happening? So those are two actions around getting people ready for the financial security portions of it. So questions there on what we're looking for? Awesome. All right. And number 4, the number of Black people that participate in financial literacy coaching, it is the same as number 3, because again, it matters that the financial security starts to happen. We get people employed, that then impacts the other 3 work streams. They're all closely aligned. But our intent is, again, just to make sure that as we think about that decreasing of the unemployment rate, but also increasing the individuals, the numbers that are employed, we do need to make sure that there isn't those stressors or those things around an individual so that they can stay employed.
I'm sorry, I did come up with a question based on the numbers. You said 1,000 Black people in 30 businesses to provide financial coaching.
Mm-hmm.
How did you come up with the 30 businesses, and are you looking for those two to coincide or be separate? And how are you looking at overlap there?
Yeah, it would be it's separate because it's 2 different things we're looking for. So, and connected but separate. So for example, if someone were to come to, for example, the Evelyn K. Davis Center and go through the financial empowerment workshop, that individual would be receiving some coaching within Polk County. Now they go back from that coaching and go back to their place of employment, and there is nothing available to them to help them navigate their financial literacy inside of the walls of the organization. So the connection there is there, that we just want to make sure, how do they take that back with them? But separately, businesses making sure that they're coaching and helping their employees inside of their walls doesn't necessarily mean it could include those 1,000, but most oftentimes not, because those 1,000 are usually the individuals that we're looking at that are either unemployed or underemployed. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks. You're welcome. Question is, what are the in-demand jobs you're looking at? That right now, I think it really depends. COVID has obviously changed the dynamics of the data as well as what's in demand. And so we know essential workers are in demand right now, but within essential workers, that is everything from janitorial services all the way to doctors. And so how do you skill build for that? That is a totally different audience. So initially we were looking at, trying to keep track of those industries or those segments from unemployment. But now, that changes things. So we'll keep fine tuning what in demand means, but that is more for when we identify the in demand, that we have people skilled and ready to meet those positions that are in demand. And we got the 1-minute warning that we're gonna go back to the main room. Any last questions? And if not, you feel free to put them in the chat. But what we're looking for, again, if there's individuals that would like to join the employment work group, please make sure to share and connect and help us lift this work up, because again, in the end, we are striving for one economy in Polk County. Thank you for joining.